In the headlines, North Korea lashes out at a UN resolution on its human rights record and vows to intensify its nuclear deterrence. Korea's balance sheet in terms of asset investments as of September makes it in the black for the first time since data has been collected. The Korean won's fall and an increase in Korean investment overseas led the surplus. And bracing for even more snow, Buffalo, New York may get another 3 feet, and that makes a year's worth of snow for this region in just 3 days. Welcome to the program. You're watching Primetime News, coming to you live from Seoul. I am Kang Tae-ri.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Let's start with North Korea's angry response today to the passage of a UN draft resolution which calls for the regime to be responsible for violating human rights.
Pyongyang totally rejected a UN committee's decision to bring the attentive resolution to the full UN General Assembly and says it would make moves to strengthen its nuclear deterrence. Lee Ji-yoon has our top story.
North Korea is angry and is now threatening to conduct more nuclear tests. On Thursday, Pyongyang's foreign ministry issued a statement strongly rejecting a United Nations draft resolution that refers North Korea to the International Criminal Court for crimes against humanity. Calling it a U.S.-led attempt to overthrow the North Korean regime, the ministry said it will no longer refrain from conducting nuclear tests. And it looks like Pyongyang is getting ready to back up its words with action. Satellite imagery taken this month suggests that the North might actually be preparing to reprocess nuclear fuel into weapons with bombing capabilities. Analysis done by the U.S. Research Institute 38 North says the plutonium production reactor at the North's Yongbyon nuclear facility has been shut down for 10 weeks. As to why the reactor was shut down for longer than it needs to be, the institute says that the North seems to be replacing spent fuel rods and preparing to reprocess them. The imagery also shows steam coming from a cooling tower that's consistent with maintenance, testing, and other activities that take place before operations begin. Analysts point out, however, that Pyongyang has gone down this path before. Its nuclear reactors were shut down in 2007 under a disarmament agreement, but last year, North Korea restarted them. Lee Ji-yoon, Arirang News.
And in response to North Korea's nuclear threat, South Korea and the U.S. have slammed Pyongyang. Seoul's Foreign Affairs Ministry says it will cooperate with members of the six-party talks to prevent additional nuclear tests by the North and warned of a strong global response.
If North Korea aggravates the situation with nuclear threats towards the international community, it will be considered a violation of the United Nations Security Council resolution. We warn North Korea that it will face a firm response from the international community.
And Washington also expressed regret over Pyongyang's threat to strengthen its military deterrence in response to the international community's attention to its human rights situation.
Local police in Paris are looking for a North Korean student who's been reported as missing for more than 2 weeks. The young man is believed to be the son of an aide to Chang Sung-taek, who was purged by Kim Jong-un last year. Our Kwon So-hwa has the details.
The North Korean man, who had been studying in Paris for around 3 years, has been missing for more than 2 weeks now. French authorities are taking the case very seriously, considering the male student's close family links to Chang Sung-taek, the uncle of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, who was purged and swiftly executed late last year. There's speculation the student, only identified by his family name Han, could be on the run from North Korean agents who want to forcefully repatriate him to the north.
We don't know the whereabouts of the student. We are currently assessing how credible this case is.
Han had been studying at an architecture college in the French capital with 9 other elite students from Pyongyang's prestigious Kim Il-sung University. Given that Han is the son of a reportedly purged aide of Chang Song-taek, there are rumors the North Korean regime is still not done with getting rid of Chang's inner circle and their associates. If the assumptions are found to be true, the case could spark a huge diplomatic row between France and North Korea, especially in the wake of the EU-drafted UN resolution that calls for the North Korean leadership to be brought before the International Criminal Court. Kwon-soa, Arirang News.
Now on to a big step forward in South Korea's tank building capabilities. 100% homegrown technology will now go into a crucial part of Korea's K2 tanks. And as our Kim Hyun-bin reports, the military says the development will help close its numerical shortfall against North Korea.
The last batch of 100 K2 Black Panther tanks, installed with a combination of a German-made engine and transmission systems, were put into service this year. The combinations are often referred to as power packs. South Korea started developing its own power packs in 2005, but the military knocked them back as they weren't deemed powerful or reliable enough. That is until now. Nearly a decade after development began, Korean power packs are now being fitted to the South Korean military's K2 tanks. The power packs enabled the tank to go from 0 to 32 kilometers an hour in just 8.7 seconds. Officials say that makes them fast enough to evade enemy anti-tank missiles.
The next batch of K2 tanks will fit future battlefield environments as they have enhanced mobility, firepower, and defense features.
North Korea has a sizable advantage over South Korea when it comes to the number of tanks it has, but most are believed to be antiquated. The North Korean military has 3,500 tanks at its disposal. The South just 2,400. Seoul plans to reduce the numerical gap by dispatching these latest tanks.
K2 tanks are far more advanced than the previous K1, so when they are fully deployed, South Korea will have the North Korean military on its toes.
The South Korean military says K2 Black Panther tanks will be in service by 2017. Officials hope to also sell the K2 to overseas buyers in the coming years. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
With deflation woes mounting here in Korea, local research institutions continue to lower Korea's economic growth forecast for this year and next. They say inflation will continue to stay in the 1% range next year, lower than the government's outlook of 2%. Song Ji-sun has more.
Slow growth and low inflation are making it hard for Seoul to reach its growth forecast this year. Korea's economic recovery has lost momentum since April's deadly ferry disaster, which dented domestic sentiment, and it appears a trend may continue well into next year. In July, Seoul slashed its growth forecast for this year from 4.1 to 3.7%. But that's still higher than the market median, which stands at 3.5%, according to financial data released Thursday. It's the same story for next year's growth outlook. While the Korean economy is expected to grow at a relatively faster rate compared to this year, the Korean government stands alone with a forecast of 4%, with others expecting the figure to fall in the 3% range. The inflation forecast for next year from private institutions rests in the 1% range, nearly a percentage point below the government's outlook. That suggests the inflation will hover in the 1% range for the third consecutive year. Slowing domestic demand coupled with falling oil prices will only compound the issue, which may sound like a good news for consumers, but not in the long run.
Once prices continue to fall, both consumption and investments shrink on expectations they will fall even more, leading to further deflation. To avoid such a recession, the government must facilitate the domestic economy in a way that boosts both growth and prices.
A weak Japanese yen, slowing growth in China, as well as an end to U.S. quantitative easing are also casting a shadow on the Korean economy as downside risks for the coming year. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Korea's balance sheet in terms of asset investments as of September has made it in the black for the very first time since data was first collected in 1994. Our Hwang Jae explains what led the surplus and what it implies for the country.
New figures show Korean banks are now less vulnerable to external shocks. That's because the country's assets overseas outpaced the debt it owes to foreigners for the first time as of the end of September. The Bank of Korea says the amount of international assets stood at $1.05 trillion compared to $1.02 trillion of foreign debt. The central bank adds that the assets and debt also includes investments in stocks.
It's not like companies are in debt if an investor buys their shares, but it means foreigners have that much of a stake in Korea. So the figure reflects a broader picture of Korea's indebtedness.
The surplus in net foreign assets comes on the back of a weak Korean won against the greenback that fell over 3% as of the end of September from 3 months ago. Although the actual amount of foreign investment in Korea remains unchanged, the amount, when converted into US dollars, drops as the won tumbles. But it's also the increased amount of Korean investments overseas that led the surplus.
In the past, Korea was concerned about foreign debt that also had a massive impact on foreign exchange rates. That also prompted worries over financial crises. But because it now has more assets overseas, the focus should be on how to manage the assets efficiently.
Analysts add that Korea's overseas investments are likely to continue on this upward trend as the country posted a current account surplus for the 31st straight month in September. Hwang Jae, Arirang News.
President Park GeunHye has asked the ruling party leadership to swiftly pass bills aimed at boosting the domestic economy. This includes ratifying free trade agreements with Australia, Canada, China, and New Zealand. The president also talked about what was discussed at the G20 summit in Brisbane, Australia. She said Korea's economic innovation plan was praised and added that political support and cooperation is crucial for revitalizing the economy and improving people's livelihoods. Also up for discussion was a bill on reforming the public employee pension system and next year's budget. The ruling party floor leader, in response, vowed to make sure the livelihood-related and budget bills pass Parliament before the deadline on December 2nd. In about 3 weeks' time, leaders from 10 ASEAN countries will be in Korea for a special meeting with President Park GeunHye. The event will be held to celebrate the 25th anniversary of Korea's relations with ASEAN. Hwang Sung-hee has more.
The 2014 ASEAN ROK Commemorative Summit will kick off in Busan on December 11th. The two-day meeting invites leaders from 10 Association of Southeast Asian Nations member countries, like Myanmar and the Philippines. Up for discussion are ways to expand cooperation between Korea and the ASEAN countries, as well as global issues such as climate change and disaster relief measures. Since establishing diplomatic ties in 1989, ASEAN has become Korea's second-largest trade partner and investment destination. The region is also one of the most popular vacation hotspots, with over 4 million Koreans visiting the bloc every year. The commemorative summit is expected to further bolster the relationship.
Last year, President Park GeunHye proposed a vision for partnership for trust and happiness in defining Korea-ASEAN relations for the future. The commemorative summit will present a comprehensive blueprint to realize this goal and will be an opportunity to celebrate 25 years of friendship between Korea and ASEAN.
The leaders will engage in bilateral meetings and enjoy a welcoming dinner on the first day of the event. The ASEAN ROK Commemorative Summit will take place on the second day, followed by a joint press conference. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
The thought of going to prison is scary to most of us, to say the least, if not all. But if it's a simulated prison cell, it might be less intimidating. Our Park GeunHye says there are, in fact, many people who voluntarily lock themselves up. Take a look.
People from all corners of the country arrive at this center in the county of Hongcheon, about 2 hours to the east of Seoul, for a couple of days of rest and relaxation. They change their clothes and turn in their personal belongings, including their mobile phones. Participants learn how to relax their bodies and meditate at a mountain. However, that's not all. This program is called Prison Inside Me, and there's a reason.
The most special feature of the program is that participants spend the night in this prison cell alone. In this setting, totally disconnected from the outside world, people can access their deepest state of mind and relieve stress while reflecting on their own lives in peace and quiet.
The center offers dozens of rooms that resemble prison cells, where people willingly lock themselves up to ponder their lives without distractions or interruptions. Since the center opened last year, several hundred people have stayed here.
I feel more somber, as all the distracting thoughts inside me disappear, as I empty my mind.
But why prison?
I first came up with the idea when I was working as a prosecutor. I was totally exhausted and wanted to spend some time alone in prison to rearrange my life.
It's that everyone has their own prison inside them and that they live under its influences. We hope this program gives people time to reflect about the restraints they live under and how to free themselves from them.
For those seeking to regain a balance in life again, a couple of days outside of their ordinary lives can provide a restart button for their weary minds and bodies. Park GeunHye, Arirang News.
A massive blizzard has hit the U.S. state of New York, killing at least 8 people in the wake of freezing winds and heavy snow.
With more, we turn to Paul Yee at the News Center. Paul, it's only the 3rd week of November, and already we're seeing a deadly snowstorm affecting the country.
Right. The blast of frigid air, according to the National Weather Service, has plunged all contiguous states down to sub-freezing temperatures. A state of emergency and travel bans have been issued for Buffalo, while the National Guard has been called in to help those stranded by this historic blizzard. Our Connie Lee has more.
New York is bracing for more snow as residents are still recovering from this week's deadly blizzard. As some residents start to dig themselves out from the massive snowbanks, New York's governor is urging residents to stay indoors.
When we say stay home, really stay home. Going out on the roads is dangerous. It's unnecessary. You're not going to get anywhere. You will get stuck, and then you will further complicate the situation.
More than 100 National Guard members have been deployed to help clear the roads and remove abandoned vehicles. Dozens of cars were stranded all around the state on Wednesday, with some passengers being stuck for nearly 30 hours before being rescued. Buffalo, New York State's second most populous city, was hardest hit with about 1.5 meters of snow. The National Weather Service predicts that some areas could break single-day records for snowfall. This early cold blast of winter has actually affected much of the country. Officials say all 50 U.S. states had areas that hit the freezing point on Tuesday, and the southern and northeast regions are expecting more record-breaking cold temperatures in the coming days. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
And turning now to China, the capital city, Beijing, has been hit by a new wave of heavy smog following the APEC summit there last week. The sharp drop in air quality came as the government's anti-pollution measures were lifted, reopening hundreds of factories and traffic on major roads. Weather forecasters issued an alert on Wednesday as the air pollution reached hazardous levels, with residents advised to take protective measures and stay indoors. An official report published earlier this year by the Chinese government said the severe pollution has made Beijing barely suitable for living. And finally, moving to Hong Kong, protesters in the Chinese-controlled territory are facing their latest crisis in the fight for fully free elections as public support hits an all-time low. A recent poll released by the University of Hong Kong showed nearly 83% of the respondents felt the protest occupation should stop. Many demonstrators who have been camping out on the streets for the last 54 days say morale has been on a sharp decline.
Morale has been greatly affected. It's not just because of the police coming to clear the protest site or the injunction. It's about what happened in Admiralty a couple of nights ago. People feel if they take action, they may be betrayed by other protesters.
Public sentiment over the civic action fell through after a small group of mass protesters tried to break into the city's legislative building early Wednesday. And that wraps up our look at international stories for now. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Hello and welcome. I'm Stephen Che with a look at Thursday's sports. Starting with golf, excitement is set to unfold at the season-ending CME Group Tour Championship with top LPGA pros Park GeunHye and Stacey Lewis battling for the tour's top honors. Lewis leads the Player of the Year race by 3 points, the money list by $300,000, and has the lowest scoring average by a fraction of a point. The 29-year-old American is also first on the race to the CME Globe for the $1 million bonus, the largest ever payout in women's golf. But the world number one, Park GeunHye, is right behind her, which means a lot is riding on the two pros this weekend. Needless to say, a win by either golfer will settle the score, as well as net them $500,000 for the winner's purse. The next 4 rounds will decide it all as the championship runs through Sunday. And going to the live games on the night, first to the KBL, the SK Knights hosted the Mobis Phoebus in the first of the doubleheader. And in the meeting of the league's top teams, the Mobis Phoebus start with the early lead, but SK wrestles it back. Then Kim Min-soo gets hot in the fourth for the Knights, helping snap the Phoebus's 11-game winning streak in the big win. And in the other matchup, the ET Land Elephants patched together 3 wins in a row, beating out the Goyang Orions on the road. And over to pro volleyball. First to the ladies. The Korea Ginseng Corporation faced the Korea Expressway Zenith. And the home team nabs the first set, but Nicole Fawcett and the Zenith hit overdrive for the next 3. The victory elevates them to second on the standings. And also in Daejeon, the Samsung Hwajae Blue Fangs snapped the red-hot OK Savings Bank Russian Cash's winning streak at 4 in the straight sets win to take the points lead for the men. And looking overseas, FIFA has refused to come clean, having decided not to publish its own investigators' World Cup bidding corruption report. FIFA President Sepp Blatter rejected the English Football Association's call to publish Michael Garcia's report, saying it would break its own rules and several Swiss laws. Meanwhile, FIFA ethics judge Hans-Joachim Eckert will meet with Garcia, perhaps to discuss the filing on Tuesday, or FIFA's filing on Tuesday, of a criminal complaint to Swiss authorities over illegal asset transfers based on Garcia's findings. And finally, NBA center Jason Collins, who mostly played for the New Jersey Nets, now the Brooklyn Nets, has retired after 13 seasons in the league. Collins won't be remembered for his impact on the court as much as for being the first openly gay athlete to play in one of the major professional sports in North America. 35-year-old announced his sexuality in the May of 2013 and played out his final season with the Nets from February this year. And that's all I have for now. Your weather's up next. Have a wonderful evening.
Hello and happy Thursday. I'm Kim Bo-kyung with your weather updates. It was another warm autumn day here in Korea with daytime highs reaching 14 degrees. However, temperatures will drop overnight, so make sure to bundle up if you are headed out. The central regions will gradually be at the edge of a high pressure front, which will lead to cloudy skies. So as a result, less than 5 millimeters of precipitation is forecast for those areas. Other than that, tomorrow's morning lows and daytime highs should jump a couple of degrees higher compared to today. Some good news that conditions over the weekend are shaping up to be warm and sunny, perfect for outdoor activities. On to Friday's readings. Seoul reaches 14, Gwangju hits 16, Busan makes it to 18. On to other regions. Daejeon and Dokdo hit 15, Mount Kumgang reaches 5. Those are the updates I have for you now. I'll be back with more after midnight. See you then.
And that's Primetime News for this Thursday. I'm Sean Lim. Thanks for watching.
And I'm Kang Tae. Have a great evening, everyone. We'll see you again soon.